Most areas, no matter if it's small town USA or a large urban environment, there is a collection, maybe even one, iconic or legendary homes. Now, what makes them iconic or legendary can vary. Sometimes it's the size of the home, the style of the home, maybe it's the value of the home, maybe it's who lives there, or that it has an incredible story and historical significance. My name is Sean Larson, real estate broker here in Middle Tennessee and the 38 Florida market, and I'm going to show you an incredible example of that today, right here in Brentwood, Tennessee. This story begins back in about 1806 or so. Now keep in mind, I'm saying 1806 and not 1906. It's just so important to know that this story spans over 200 years, which is just incredible. The property at that time was owned by Jabez Owen, and he constructed this log cabin which has been fully restored, and we're going to take a tour of that later in the video, and it is just spectacular. Well, in about 1846 or so, the property is under the ownership of Thomas Primm, and he takes the vision of the property to a new level, and he begins framing a Greek Revival style home that so many of us in Brentwood have become just such fans of. It is an incredible home. We drive by it regularly. We've seen garden lights on and events going there. And time had passed until about a few years ago when development was coming through Brentwood. The home had kind of fallen into a bit of disrepair, and it was approaching the end of its timeline. New development was going to come in, but everybody loved the home and the awesome red and white barn. We can't forget that. That's an icon here in Brentwood. And so people stepped up and decided to save the Owen-Primm home. And what you see before you is the result of that. So the original home from about 1846 was just over 2,000 square feet or so. It has been fully restored and new construction has been added. So what started at about 2,000 or so square feet, maybe just a little above that, is now over 11,000 square feet of modern day luxury. So we're going to take a tour of this home. I'm just trying to show you all the awesome property. It sits on about 5 acres or so. It is surrounded by luxury homes. You have the Primm Farm community right behind the home. You've got Montclair across the street. Again, this is right on Moores Lane. Cool Springs is less than a mile down the road, so your conveniences are immediate. Crockett Park is about the same distance. You have a lot of events there during the summer. The July 4th fireworks are held at Crockett Park. So it's not only an iconic home, the location is just extremely prominent. And everybody that drives by the home can't help but to comment on that. So let's start our tour. We're going to start outside, show you a little bit of the exterior, and then we're going to hop inside and show you all the new luxury that has been added to this home. Again, the style is Greek Revival, and the part you're looking at now is original. And so when you think back, this was 1846 when this was constructed. That is just unbelievable. And while I don't claim to be a history buff at all, I do have an extreme fascination about how many things have occurred at the same place over time. For instance, where you're standing right now, think at all the things that occurred at the place you are right now. So when I look at homes like this, you know, we're talking 200 years. You think about all of the things that took place right here on this property, right here on this porch. And wait till we step in those front rooms and you see them from 200 years ago. Just letting you take it all in. Look at all the finishes, look at the brick. And I know everybody has a different appreciation for looking at videos and new construction and homes, and some just want the highlights. I really appreciate all the fine details, and I know some other viewers do as well, so we're going to take a look at those, and just so you can see the exterior, how it was built. And kudos to the architect. You know, when you take on a project like this, and you try to maintain the vision and same look and approach and expand on that, that is a talent unto itself. Got the accents on the ceiling. So you can just imagine, you know, you're pulling through here in your car, but at the same time you think back, wow, what is it like, you know, if you pulled through this in a horse and carriage? Now granted, this is part of the new construction, but it's still fun imagining. We're going to go inside the garage later, but one thing to note, and I try to note these features because even in high-end homes, you know, people are trying to determine what the differences are, and sometimes these small things, like look at the height of the garage doors. You know, those are not normal height. You know, so if you have larger vehicles, that comes into play. The different style of door panels, whether the panels are insulated, a lot of that comes into play. And all those details, you know, when you're talking about a home that's 11, 12, you know, 1,000 square feet, those small details add up quickly. So you pull around, you have this large motor courtyard, parking pad, 2 additional bays right there. Love that red standing seam roof. I mean, it just fits this project so perfectly. And again, the red and white, it just really stands out. The barn that all of us have loved so much, we're going to tour that as well. Again, that's over 6,000 square feet. Over time, gravity had started tugging on that a little bit. Everybody loved it and wanted to save it. So it has been fully rebuilt. You can see it in that corner of the property. And we're going to tour that as well. And it's fit for occasions. You can put a luxury car collection in there. It is awesome. Back out to the front of the property. And this shows you how far the home is set off the road as well. You have Moores Lane there, takes you directly to the Galleria, the Cool Springs area. And just a note for people who might be watching from out of the area, Cool Springs is not a city unto itself. Sometimes I get that question. It is part of Franklin, but it has become so prominent over the years. It started with the Cool Springs Galleria back in the early 1990s. And so much commercial and corporate has built up there. You know, have everything from big box stores to corporate headquarters. It's become so prominent, sometimes people think Cool Springs is, you know, its own city, but it is not. It's just part of Franklin. But it is right down the road, so you are only minutes away from everything you should ever need. At that same point, you have quick connection to I-65. Takes you just about everywhere you want to go. If you're commuting downtown, or if you just need to hit another connection of 24 or I-40, it takes you there as well. Look at the details. Spectacular column. Man, that is just awesome. The shutters. And even as I look at this, you know, so much of this is new construction. But I instantly think back to all the events, and I keep going back to those garden lights, because quite often if they were having an event, maybe it was weddings or a party or something, right off the front here, right in this lawn, there would be like white garden lights strung out. It was always great to see. So again, this property is like an icon right here in Brentwood. So you can see more extensively as we come around this side just how far this home goes and how well they maintain the theme. Because when you look at homes of that era, you know, sometimes those homes were built over time. You know, they would start with the front section and they would add on really as they could. It wasn't always build the massive project at one time. You would build part of the house and then you would add on additionally, kind of off the back, you'd add on a kitchen and such. And so you can see that even driving through the Heartland, you know, today. And so that explains kind of why the shapes of some of the farm homes that you see. And so although this is now a luxury home, it 100% follows that, so it looks so genuine for the time. Okay, so let's start this inside tour. and show you everything that occurred inside, and you are going to be amazed. And look at that. It even starts with the front doors. Look at that. The twin thin doors. The hardware. I mean, it just fits the theme right from the beginning. Look at that. Now keep in mind, we just stepped in to 1846. So this is the front part of the home that is original. The floors, look at those. And I'm going to show you some of the texture in those. And it is just amazing. It just brings you back to that time. Got the main staircase. The home layout does have 2 staircases. This is the one just inside the front door. Have your dining room right off to the left. And again, we are in the 1846 version of the home. So you're going to see all those characteristics. Look at that brick above that fireplace. Is that not cool? Okay, let me show you some of the texture in this floor. Look at that. Now granted, you know, the floor, all that could have been replaced. It could have been sanded so smooth that you didn't see anything. But you know, that kind of would have ruined it. You know, you want that characteristics. You know, you want to see the past. That's part of what makes this home iconic. Look at the glass. Let me see if you can see it in the video. Move the camera a little bit and see if you can see the what I would call wavy glass. That is just cool. You also see with the sashes, see the rope and the pulley system at the top? What that does is that's a counterbalance for the windows. So when you raise the sash, there is a weight inside of the wall on the other end of that rope, and it's a counterweight. So when you pull the sash up, the weight helps balance it. You know, today that's simply done with springs in the window frames. But it's nice to see those ropes and pulleys. So look at that brick. You're looking at 1846. Is that not cool? You have a current firebox in there. Have your brick hearth. Just look at the characteristics. Look at that. Where that brick meets that wood. And yeah, it could have been sanded flat and glossed up with, you know, multiple coats of polyurethane like today's new construction. But that's not what this house is about. You know, this is about preservation of an iconic and legendary home in Brentwood. And we talk about a lot about lighting fixtures as well and sizing them for the space. And this is just spot on. Not only the appearance and design of it, but the sizing of it. Have that incredible table. So we're back across the foyer. Show you that transom up there. That hardware. Perfect for this era. You know, we like looking at the details too. And when it comes to wall coverings like that, you know, small details. Have the receptacle covers wrapped. And when we're down here, look at the size of the base molding. You know, a lot of times, no matter if people are looking at, you know, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, or $10 million homes, you know, they're trying to determine what the differences are. And kind of like we pointed out some differences outside in terms of, you know, garage door size and height and insulation and all that, base molding, crown molding, the level of trim, all of those things help differentiating the homes. Love how open the staircase is. Look at that. It's not framed up. Nice open space under that. Now in a modern build, not modern style home, just current day build, that floor plan, very typical in our area to have a dining room on one side and an office on another. Now back in the era when they first built these, these would probably be living rooms and such like that, because these were the two main rooms of the home. You had two right above that, or above these, but this was the older section from 1846. So these two rooms that we've entered, the dining room and this office, you have to keep in mind, these were the majority of the home. So these were probably used for, living and gathering rooms, probably multi-purpose. But look how what was built that long ago has been transformed into what everybody loves in a luxury home today. Perfect green color for this as well. Come over and take another look at this brick. Again, 1846 right there. Look at that. Another good design element too, when you're trying to preserve a property and maybe modernize it, you don't want to lose the heritage. So just look at the way that was planned intentionally with the trim. Now you could have easily, just sheetrocked over there, thrown a TV up there and made it a media type thing. But look at that. They took care, trimmed it, kept the brick detail. And that takes foresight and vision. The brick continues down. You have a current firebox. You've got the brick hearth, flush with the floor. And look at that. Sure, you could have gone back in, and filled everything, changed the floor, sanded it flat. But then you virtually ruined the home by doing that. Beautiful work. Another thing you'll notice too, during this whole transformation of the new and blended with the old and blended with the new, look how current it is. This is very typical of what people are looking for in current day built luxury homes. So sometimes you'll go, either on the market or maybe even go on a tour. Maybe you're in a tourist town and you decide to go see some older homes. Quite often those are set up and they're staged, to be period-like. So they look old, like when they were built. But that's not today's buyer for a home like this. Today's buyer wants something that is like a current day luxury home. So that was part of the vision as well. Preserve the old home, expand on it with luxury living, finish it out, keeping the roots and the heritage of the home, but making it what somebody wants to live in today. And if that's not the perfect recipe, to maintain and keep an iconic home going, I don't know what is. Come through this cased opening. Now we are just now crossing the point between 1846 and the current day build. And it is nearly seamless. It is incredible. But this is what homeowners are looking for today. In the luxury market, they're looking for this style. Have your glassed wine room. Look at that. It's not only functional, but beautiful. Look at that. You got glass sides. Got your glass swinging door on the other side, and it just becomes like a centerpiece there. We talk about this in some videos as well, that, when you have a home that has so many windows, you want that light to come in. You want the home to be bright. So in order to maintain that, you keep the finishes light. In this home, you see a lot of lighter paint, lighter floor tones. And all of that keeps from absorbing the light that came in. So when somebody says, hey, it's flooded with bright light, soft light, well, you want to keep that feeling. You don't want it to come in and just hit, a home that is totally dark toned. Now, having accent rooms that are dark toned, like an office or a media room, that's perfect. But a lot of times you want to keep them bright, and you do that by selecting light finishes. A lot of times on the sides of the fireplaces, you'll see it flanked with built-ins. I love how they took this approach and built spaces for furniture insets. Love that. Look at the size hearth there. I like how raised that is. Have your base molding detail there. Large firebox. You notice when we came in the front door too, you could see straight through the home, straight through the glass doors on the rear. And that was very, very common and typical for a lot of farm type homes. Another thing that helps it, keep it bright. Everybody today enjoys open floor plans. Let me back up a little bit here to show you. Is this not the ultimate example of open floor plan? And don't worry, there are plenty of other living spaces here. You can imagine the gatherings and events you can have here with all your friends and family. Now keep in mind, we had the dining room in the front area of the home. Here is a second dining area. And see, it just flows so well from kitchen to your dining to one of your living spaces. Keeps everybody connected. As we pass by the short hallway that connects the kitchen to the dining room, you have your wine room on the left that we took a look at. Walk-in pantry. A lot of custom built shelves there. You're going to hear that a lot in this home. Every time we hit a closet, I'm going to remind you that all of that is custom built on site. And I like how they extended this lower shelf a little bit. So maybe you're pulling items off the shelves and you need somewhere to set them temporarily. I like how they bumped that out. Good idea. Have your glass fronted door. Oh, look at that. Porcelain doorknobs. Look at that detail. That's vision right there. Have your cabinet fronted refrigerator. Got some vintage brass hardware going on. Nailed the color of those cabinets. Sometimes we talk about contrasting cabinets, whether it be with base and uppers, but we also talk about, having some contrast, yet they coordinate with base cabinets in the island. And look, they nailed it here. Look at the color of the base cabinets and then with the island. That is perfect, especially for this theme. Got your marble countertops. Nice clean cut edge. That's one thing that has really changed as well. Years past, there were a lot of different edge cuts that everybody selected. But this real clean corner edge cut is what's popular right now. Sink positioned in the corner. How cool is that? And look at the view. Quite often people will ask about windows in relation to sinks, whether it's a custom building or something like that. Look at that, you've got a full wraparound, window bank around this sink. This is perfect. Got your 5 burners. Just look at that hardware. Is that not beautiful or what? Look at that. Then coordinating in the base of the island. Have your additional sink. That way you have a main sink and a prep sink. Look at all that storage. Really nice crown molding. I like too that, the Carrara marble, that is such a highlight. Look at that. They didn't try to compete with a backsplash that was too busy. Real clean line backsplash. Beautiful. Got your double ovens. Look at that view from this corner of the kitchen. Just look at that. That is beautiful in anybody's book. Another glass fronted door. I like the size of the panels as well. You only have 4 glass fronts there. Because sometimes, if you cut the door up too many times, it can get a little busy. So those larger panels just look good and classic. Look at those base cabinets. Is that not perfect for this build? That is awesome. Same thing, didn't get too busy with the backsplash. Plenty of custom uppers. And this is pantry and prep all in one. You've got dishwasher. Look at that secondary refrigerator. So I say that to kind of point out that those uppers, you really don't need doors on those, because if there's a lot of activity and a lot of action going on in here, sometimes it might be during an event. You don't necessarily need doors on all those uppers, so having open shelves is much more functional. Beautiful floors continue in here. Nice swinging door. Look at that hardware on that. See, it's in those details. Every time you go into a home of any level, it doesn't need to be an $8 million home. Any home you go into, the details are what build the theme of the home. And so they have nailed it on this one. The hardware you have, look at this. You got the porcelain doorknobs, the floor selection. Spectacular. Yet it all blends into what people are looking for in a current luxury home. Look at that. Got your hallway gallery. Look at all the doors and light. Beautiful. So we're turning left in what you might call a back hall. You have a powder room here for guests. Again, look, even in the powder, huge base molding. Huge. That is spectacular. Look at that sink. Kind of a floating vanity going on there. Look at the ceiling height. It's incredible. Perfectly placed too. You've got it in the back hallway here off the living space. That is perfect. Here on the left, we have the swinging door that we just looked at in the pantry and prep kitchen area. Just a note, the hardware you see there, that is what allows the swinging, and that contains the spring and everything. So you have a double way or a two-way swinging door. Super convenient. Even the detail on the door panels. But keep in mind, look at this. Kind of another detail note here. See how you have the transom? You got the windows above the doors. Now sometimes what you could do is you could run like an 8-foot door right there. But that wouldn't be as keeping with the theme. So instead what they did is they they put a transom up there, and that lets, light flood in from the hallway as well. So that's something, the designer and the architect, they took careful attention to those details. And a lot of times that takes a lot of research. What did homes of that era look like? What features did they use? What did it look like? What materials did they use? What kind of detailing took place? So here we are at the door closest to the outside. It's kind of the drive-through, the porte-cochere area. So if you entered there, you might have coats, hats, backpacks, sports gear, something like that. So what we normally call a drop zone is right here. Look how spacious it is. Got the benches, hanging hooks in every locker. You've got a receptacle there for charging phones and pads and laptops, what have you. Everything that gets dropped there. Look at that detail. Even a split door. Look at that. So that is right through the drive-through area that we looked at earlier in the video. And that goes across to the other 2-bay garage. Another double swinging door. So you got your spring hardware there. Perfect hardware selection. Gonna come into the laundry. Look at that floor tile. Has a good vintage look to it, but it also gives the pop that people want today in luxury homes. And there are certain areas, laundries, powders, offices, media rooms, they just work great for putting that pop in. So you see a lot of kind of pattern tile in laundry rooms today. Look at that, got your upper cabinets going all the way to the ceiling. Lighting fixture, just a touch of industrial look to it, which is perfect for a laundry room. Got a little bit of riveting look to it. Nice hardware. Got your sprayer. And you need utility stuff like that in a laundry room. Over in this corner, you've got a pet wash station with its very own valve and sprayer. Well placed too, right here in the back hallway. Perfect for that utility and laundry room. Okay, so we're gonna duck into one of the garages right here. So even in the highest level of luxury homes, I love looking at garages. I like looking at garages, crawl spaces. I just like seeing the ins and outs of how homes work. And I like seeing to what degree the garages are finished. Look at that. I mean, this is finished like your living space is. Again, you've got the high doors, you've got the insulated door panels. Beautiful job, even on the HVAC unit. Look how nice and tidy that is. Fantastic. And keep in mind, this is a 2-bay garage or 2-vehicle garage here, and then across the pull-through, you have an additional 2. We've returned to the rear hallway. Look at the light just pour in there. Isn't that beautiful? Looking back toward the front door, just for reference. And that's one thing, as good as still photography or still pictures are of a property, and don't get me wrong, I love still photography. Video somewhat gives you a reference of how the rooms are laid out. And there are several options. You can do walkthrough tours, walkthrough video. There's a Matterport system. But it kind of gives you an idea of how the rooms are laid out, especially if you're looking at a home, from distance. So we're looking back into the 1846 version of the home. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a huge history buff, but I am just fascinated with what goes on in a single place over time. And to think right here, we're standing in this foyer, everything that occurred over 200 years right here. You know, people came through this foyer and out those front doors, you know, to greet people who arrived on horse and carriage. That is just incredible to think that we're standing in a modern luxury home and everything that occurred right here in these front rooms. And that is what makes a home like this iconic and legendary. That's just amazing to me. So to the right, we have the primary suite. Here on the left, we're going to have the elevator. Got your call button, porcelain doorknob, perfect finish. You have twin doors here that allow you to close off the primary suite. As we start looking at doors as well, you know, it's easy for people to kind of just overlook doors, but look how specific they were on the door panel profile. Very much fits the vision. Come in, you've got a wet bar right here. A little bit of bling there with some mirror back. But if you look at it, look at that. See, it's like antique mirror. So even when they wanted to use a little bling, they picked the perfect stuff for it. You know, that'd have a different look if it was just straight mirrored glass, but it's got that vintage look to it. That is perfect. Love that fixture. So just for reference, we're looking out the front side of the home here. It's always nice to kind of have reference on where you are in the home. If you've watched the videos, I also try to give people size reference of rooms. Because even though you might have an MLS sheet or you might be looking on a website and it tells you room size, sometimes that's hard to translate. But people can relate to something they know. So if you're familiar with a king-size bed and the size of an average nightstand, look how large this room is. Look how much room is to the side of each one of those nightstands. Plenty of room for all the furniture, multiple living spaces. Look at that. All the soft, beautiful light coming in here. If you notice, almost the whole room is wrapped with windows. That is just beautiful. Vaulted ceiling. Perfect light fixture. Again, sized perfectly for the space. I even like too, see how the mantle might be a little narrower and a little taller? Kind of a design element of that era. Love that. Again, front side of the home. Right out there on the lawn is where we began the video. We were talking about the home design and how homes of that era were structured, about adding on as people went. And right out there is when we were talking about it. So if you want to reference that in the video of which side of the home we were looking at, that was it. Notice too, a lot of use of twin doors, 2 door panels. You had it in the hallway entering the primary. We've got it here. And see how that kind of mimics like the front entrance? It was very common in that era to use doors that way. Look at that tile. Is that not spectacular? Got your heated floors. Look at that ceiling detail. That is spectacular. Just a note while we're here, the window lets additional light to the shower. The shower is behind that wall. And so when we talk about letting light in a home and keeping it bright with light finishes, other design features, kind of like those transoms that I just pointed out, that helps the light flow through the home. So your lighter finishes keep the light from being absorbed, but transoms like that let the light flow through the home. That single mirror flanked with those sconces, beautiful. Extends down for a makeup counter. That hardware. That is simply gorgeous. Look at the detailing over the windows. Look at that. So the tub has its very own nook right here in the primary bath, flooded with light. Beautiful freestanding fixture with sprayer, perfect for the period. Walk in, you've got your primary shower. Have your wide bench, have your sprayer with an independent valve, variable height rail mount. Double heads, each with their own valve. Access door on each side. Have your linear drain. Look at that tile on the floor. Beautiful. I talk in videos sometimes about tile sizes. And when it comes to vintage looks, I love small tiles. You hear me talk a lot about, penny-sized tiles. But look at the awesome blend just in this one shot right here. You have the hex tile pattern as you come in. You segue into a larger square, and then you've got the larger hex in the shower floor. That is just a spectacular blend. That is beautiful. Water closet room. And it's those details that help keep homes interesting. Now, working in the industry, we see a lot of homes, and sometimes when a trend hits, you see a lot of that trend. And so some of the homes can actually start looking very similar because the trend is so popular, everybody wants it. Everybody either remodels using that, or the new construction all starts looking that way. So every time you go into a home that has something unique, for example, those tiles right there, you had 3 different tile accents or uses right there in the floor. It's nice to walk through homes and just, kind of be surprised, like, wow, we've got something really interesting here. Case in point, we've got these built-ins with your access ladder. That is awesome. You spin around, we have kind of like a secondary ready area. We had the makeup counter that extended from the vanity, but you have a second one right here in the closet. That is spectacular. And keep in mind, all of this is custom built. So when they have these wood finishes, that is built specifically for the closet. Got adjustable shelves right there. That light fixture. Sized perfectly. If you notice, the island is linear, and they have a linear type light fixture. Now on the far wall, we've got another door. And I'm going to let that be a surprise here just shortly. Look at that ladder. That's perfect. You know, because people often ask, well, how do you reach everything from those high shelves? Well, there's your answer. So we exit the closet. We're back into the primary bath. Beautiful shower. Have matching vanity on this side. Mirror flanked by the sconces. Perfect plumbing fixtures and finish for this build. On this side, we have a second water closet, small linen closet, access to the shower. Second walk-in closet for the primary bed and bath. Everything custom built. Have everything from hanging, shoe racks, folded clothes. That is just awesome. Off the closet is a small utility room with some access points for mechanicals of the home. That was vision there to put that in ahead of time. Full height door. That is just perfect. There's another door, kind of like the other closet. Yep, I'm going to let that be a surprise too. Look at that. So we're exiting the primary bath through the primary bedroom, back out to the living space. We're crossing, again, this is toward the front side of the home. We have just entered, we're kind of walking along the front side of the newer section. Right there in the foyer, remember, that was kind of where we went from 1846 to current day. Panning through the living area, walking toward the rear of the home. Yeah, I know. You saw the pool. Everybody wants to see the pools. We'll get there. Let's just enjoy this light here. Look at that. Look at the light just pouring in. Look how wide that hallway is and those beautiful floors. That is amazing. How would you just like to walk through that every day? I mean, that just lifts your mood right there, just looking and walking through that. So as we start down the hallway, I'm just going to note that we have a secondary staircase right here to the right. We're going to come back to that. We have a hallway right here. A few notable items. Have another half bath or a powder room here. Look at the design on that sink. Look at the edge work. Have the wall mount faucet. That is just beautiful. So this is your half bath or powder room. And see, this is another perfect placement. You know, it's kind of in a back hallway. Next to it, you have a storage closet. And here are the surprises. Okay, see the two door panels, right? You've got your wall hangings. Look at that. Right into the closet. Is that not cool? Sure, you can guess where the other one goes. That's right, into the other closet. Look at that. Is that not cool? Turn around. That is just spectacular. Has navigation purposes and it's just cool. Hidden doors are always cool, and these are implemented so well with the trim. So kudos on that design. That is so cool. Down the hallway of light. This is just gorgeous. And notice all the doorways that go out to the pool and decking area. You have access points everywhere. So off to the right here, we have a secondary bedroom. That detail already jumps out at you. Look how well they trimmed around that cold air return on the wall there. Beautiful. You like people that build in a way that they really key in on those details and go the extra mile. And again, this is also on the front side of the home. We began the video out on the lawn, and we showed you how the home went horizontally. And again, we talked about how, back in the era, they would build homes in sections. So this is just spot on for that. Walk-in closet. Everything's custom built. Plenty of room for folded clothes. You have your drawer stacks. Have your top side for storage or just temporarily putting things while you're getting ready. Have your full length hanging. Have your half height. Look at that. You can even store things on top if you want. Perfect built-in. Same beautiful floors. Look at that. You ready for this? Look at that. That is 10 out of 10 if I've ever seen it. That is gorgeous. Everything from the tub to the exposed plumbing. Now you have to keep in mind, this is designed for this era and to keep this feel. That is just spectacular. Even the glass on that fixture, look at that. See how it's kind of bubbled? See, that glass could have easily been produced back in that era. So while it might have a little bit of a current look to it, it's completely plausible that light could have been manufactured back then. Look at that freestanding fixture with sprayer, chrome. Have your chrome fixtures, your marble top. Love the exposed plumbing. I love that. Even the tile on the wall. And the fact that they put the tile to about the height that would be kind of typical for what somebody might think like a chair rail. That is just awesome. Now keep in mind, this is a secondary bedroom. And you've got dual sinks in here. And when you look at this exposed plumbing, how beautiful it is. And sometimes, somebody might say, hey, well, there's not a vanity there. Sometimes it's harder to leave things exposed than it is to cover them up. And so when you have something open like that, that took a lot of work to make that thing look intentional, clean, and beautiful like that. Walk-in shower, curbless. And by curbless, see the floor tile simply transitions right into the shower tile there. For those that are asking, why doesn't the water run out? There is a slight slope to the shower floor that carries the water to your linear drain there. Look at that, all the way to the ceiling. Simply spectacular. I've got to give you another shot of this tub. That thing is just gorgeous. When I see bathrooms set up kind of like this, it kind of gives me almost like a Biltmore feel. You go into some of those bathrooms, if you've ever been to the Biltmore over in North Carolina, it just gives me that feel, and that is just awesome. So when you see all the features like this, and we talk about what makes a home iconic or legendary, you're looking at it. All of these details just add up to make one incredible presentation. And there you go. There's the next incredible presentation. Another living room, vault ceiling, exposed beam, twin chandeliers. It's almost a dining room and living room combined. And look, all of those doors open to the pool deck. And although we have 4 seasons in Tennessee, we have a little cool in the winter and we have a little warm in the summer. But so many of your seasons are usable. So when you have doors that open like that to a pool deck or any outdoor area, wow, look at that. Look at that tile. All the way to the ceiling. That is something. You really can use those doors and open up a lot of the seasons. That kind of comes in to conversation when people are talking about, building 4 seasons rooms or whatever you want to call those. But around here, you can use a lot of those year round. The colds are usually brief and the hots, well, they come and go. Wow, look at that stone all the way to the ceiling. So I can just imagine this home with all those doors open, guests here for an event. Very reminiscent to when I was speaking of in the very beginning of the video, how we'd drive by and you'd see the garden lights up and they'd be having maybe a family event or a wedding or something here. The weather is just usually so beautiful to do that it's good to design the home for that. And they did exactly that by having all those doors functional. Also, look at the transoms above there. Again, letting that light pour in. That small kitchenette bar type area. Have your dishwasher, ice maker, beverage cooler, cabinets to the ceiling, have lights in the uppers. Beautiful. I like that color too. That hardware. Nice soft tones. Even in the kitchen, you notice that green was soft, and this is kind of like a blue-gray that is really, really soft. Folding window, look at that, right above the sink. So if you're serving people from this area and they're outside, look at that. The window folds open, and it just becomes an open space where you can easily serve. It's all about that vision, planning ahead. Helps eliminate the, oh, I wish we would have's after a build is complete. Oh, look at that floor tile. Nice. All the way into the shower. Even look at the hardware. See, very period-like. Have your head, which is a detachable sprayer. Really nice soft gray. Kind of a warm gray right there on the vanity. Beautiful countertop. Heavy veining. Like that real basic mirror mount. Very, very, very period-like. And this is really cool that you don't see this too often either. That is actually an exterior door. So if anybody's outside, maybe they're coming from the pool, maybe they're out there working, what have you, and they just need to dash in for a half bath use, you have an exterior door right there on this half bath. And most people probably don't see that, so they might be a little surprised. But I tell you, that is one practical design element right there, especially If you have a pool, or if you're an outdoors person and you like working on your property, working in the garden, or what have you, having an exterior door into a bathroom is so functional. Highly recommend. Look at that. That is just something. Again, functional doors. Back to the hallway of light. I just love this hallway. I just love how light enters a home. And I have some imaging background. And so when you do anything in imaging, it's all about light. So you tend to look at the world a little differently. You look at even the simple things about how light wraps around trees, how things are rim lit. So right here, just as the light enters, just look how the detail of the window moldings and trim just pop. It just gives you texture, just makes you see the world a little differently. So I absolutely love how light pours into a home. So we're heading back to the living space. We're going to take this secondary staircase that we saw on the way. We're going to head up. So as we come up the stairs, I'm going to point out that you actually come to a midway landing right here. And then you continue upward. Now, some of that is a design element, and sometimes that's just code. You have a limit on how far you can run stairs with a certain height. So it's a blend of code and design element. But it's also a comfort thing as well. So as you traverse steps and you come to that landing, there's just a comfort about that. And it works perfectly in this home. We come to our first upstairs sitting area. Have your wet bar. Again, tile to the ceiling. Nice warm tones in there. Brass fixture. Have your ice maker, your beverage fridge or cooler. Look at that hardware. That's not cool. Light tone floors continue up here. Beautiful. Recessed light in addition to your center. Built-ins and base cabinets. And this is one of those rooms, you could use it for anything you wanted. This wall could even become a media wall if you wanted. It's just so spacious. And look at the size of the sectional there. And that just kind of helps let you know the size of the room. On the left, we have elevator. Have your call button and your porcelain doorknob. Here on the left, we've got a powder. Wood floor continues in. Have a pedestal sink. And we talk sometimes about how light fixtures are design elements, but we also talk about the light pattern that they put on the ceiling is a design element. Look at that, kind of like a starburst. That is ultra cool. Closet on your left there. So we just came upstairs on the far side, just giving you some bearings on the home. Secondary bedroom. Look at the size of that base molding. That is just huge. Love that. Have your recessed light, your center. All custom built-ins in the closet. We also talk about in these videos about how little details like base molding and crown, can vary throughout the home. But here you can see we're on the upper level and they still maintained the large base. Beautiful. Just to give you reference where we are in the home. So if we were looking at the front of the home from out in the yard, we are on the left upper corner. I'll clarify that left corner as we go through the home. Look at that. That is awesome. I love intricate tile details, especially when the home either is trying to replicate something old or actually is old. The smaller tiles just have that vintage look, but there's so many options now. You're able to keep like the design element, you're just not sticking with just, penny tiles or something like that. You've got this, you've got options for incredible design. And look at that, the gray blue in there goes perfectly with their tile selection, and it coordinates perfectly with that stain color of the vanity. And look at even the drawer panels. See, all that detail goes together to make a theme. You just don't go randomly go pick a vanity style or, a design for your door panel that you just kind of like. It's all about making everything coordinate. And if anybody has ever seen a home that used a designer and didn't use a designer, you can quite often see the difference. Now, some people just naturally have the talent and they've picked some things and they've done an awesome job. So I'm not discounting that at all. But a lot of times you can tell in a big project where the designer really shined because they really watched the details. We're back down the hallway. Living space is on the right, just to give you a reference. Secondary bedroom. Look at the size of this bedroom. Recessed light, have your center. Look how airy that center light is. That's just beautiful. It doesn't become too heavy. And it would be very like that period or era to have a design like that. Walk-in closet, all custom built in. Have your full height, your half length, plenty of shelving for shoes or folded clothes. Beautiful. Also, sticking with the door panel detail, have your ceramic doorknobs. And look how bright this room is. Everywhere we go in the home is just bright. Spectacular. Here's a dedicated bathroom. Again, really soft, warm gray tones on the vanity. And anybody who studies color can tell you that color directly relates to mood. That's why spas have such, they've got soft colors. They want you to relax. They want you to be cheerful. Not cheerful in a let's go party way. They just want you to relax. And so you can see in this home, very similarly, they've used those soft colors. Even in the kitchen, it just has a comfort feel to it. A space that you want to be in. That tile all the way to the ceiling. Beautiful design. Large tub. That's in a secondary bedroom, upper level on the rear of the home. Back to the hallway. Now this room is cool. It is just awesome. And I love translating for people where we are in a home in relation to the exterior. So you remember we had the pull through by the garages, the porte-cochere part. Okay, this actually extends over that area. So you're going to see we traverse down a few steps here. And this is the part that is actually going over that pull-through area between the garages. So it's always fun translating a home for people. So what we have here is we have 3 attic doors. You've got a full-size door ahead, 2 what I'd probably consider half-height doors, a little more, and you have attic storage in there. You also have attic access for any maintenance or any needs like that. Whenever you build a home, you have to be able to access all your attic voids. So this is for that intent, and it is just such a cool design for that. Not to mention, you've got storage right here in this room. So if you wanted to put bookshelves or something like that along the walls in here, you could. You could even make it a little cozy nook for reading. Sometimes the small spaces, let me turn around and give you another shot of that, are the coziest. Lower ceiling like that, the walls are a little closer. You can even put a chair or something in there. I know the little ones love a space like this. So again, that's over the pull-through, and you've got 3 attic storage space doors there. I like it because it's different. I absolutely love going in homes and seeing stuff that's different. Secondary bed, second level of the home. Look at that. Kind of like a linen. Oh yeah. Walk-in closet, plenty of built-ins. Dedicated bath. Look at that floor. Kind of a warm hex. You have a little bit of gray, but a little bit of earth color in there too. That is spectacular. Just like we talked about in the other one as well, look how it perfectly coordinates with the tile for the curb, on the shower curb. That is awesome. Soft gray vanity. Have your marble top. Same thing there too. You have a blend of cool and warm in the veining. Wall mount fixture. Hanging mirror flanked by sconces. That's spectacular. I can't help but to point out the red roof. I absolutely love it. And we've seen that with the barn for so many years. It's become iconic right here in Brentwood. You can see the barn just over to the right there. Everybody in Brentwood knows about the barn. So we absolutely love the red and white scheme of the home. It is just awesome. And to see that red, not to mention that's some durable roofing material too. So it is a win-win. So just a note, that's kind of the motor courtyard that we're overlooking, where the garages are. Just to kind of give you a reference. Back out into the hallway. For reference, we're heading toward the rear of the home. More detailing over the cold air return right there. Nice. Look at that, wrapped with windows. Have your recessed lighting, ceiling fan. I am a huge, huge fan of recessed lighting. I am a firm believer that if I don't want as much light, I can always turn it down with a dimmer, but I can't turn it up if I don't have it. So I love seeing a lot of recessed lighting in a home. Just to give you a second level look here, this is overlooking the pool area. So we're heading back toward the front of the home. Down the hallway, we're going to pass some secondary bedrooms that we've already toured. Going to pass the porte-cochere tunnel there. Love that space. Back to the living room, upstairs. We're just about central in the home right now. So we're heading toward the front door, down a couple steps. We have kind of just a media closet there ahead of us where everybody runs the Ethernet cables and everything, so it's all in one central location. Here we have our main staircase that is in the foyer. So what does that mean? That means about right in this area, guess what we did? We're stepping back to 1846. So we came down just these few stairs. So right in this area, I showed you on the lower level where we were kind of changing eras from original to new construction. So we are in that era, or in that area again, just on the upper level. So we are stepping back to 1846. I love that. That is so cool. And again, that's what makes these homes iconic. Light fixture. There's the 1846 foyer right there. If you just imagine everything that occurred right here over that span of years. I love it. It's just amazing. Got a little bit of wavy glass. I don't know if it'll show up on the video or not, but a little bubble there. I love glass like that. That's incredible. We're on the front side of the home. We are in 1846 right here. We are in the current day version. So let me show you the floors again. And yeah, they could have filled everything in, slicked it over with poly, but that would have ruined it. This is perfect. Let me give you a shot, show you where we are in the front of the home here, overlooking the lawn. And again, the home is on 5 acres, right on Moores Lane. You're just down the road from the entire Cool Springs area and an I-65 connection if you need it. Got your red roof. Luxury home going in next door. The home is definitely in good company. Luxury all around. Look at that heavier brick hearth. Floor details. Brick surround. You have a current firebox. And then up top, like we talked about downstairs, they paid attention to this detail, framed it with trim, but you're looking at 1846 brick. That is awesome. You know, it reminds me a lot of times when you go downtown of a major city, in Nashville, that would be somewhere around, 1st and 2nd Avenue, and you see all the old buildings that have the vintage brick, and the commercial enterprises in there a lot of times will leave the brick exposed because it's such a great detail inside. Have more rope and pulley systems for your window sashes. So right here inside the wall is where the weight would be. So as you raise the sash, the weight lowers in a cavity in the wall and just serves as a counterbalance for the window so it will stay in place. Same thing on this side. And again, modern day, they use springs for that. But it's nice to see those ropes and pulleys. Back into the upper level, I guess what you would consider the landing, or we're just above the foyer. So we're still in 1846 right here. Beautiful door panels. Again, look at the floor. Look at the detail. See, this would be one of the places where if somebody went and toured a place like this in another town, they would come home just raving about it. because, you know, everything they witnessed, all the details, how cool it was, how good it felt. They probably heard some stories about it while they were there. And that's one of the things in the beginning of the video I mentioned. One of the things that makes homes iconic or legendary is the history of them. People love stories about homes. That's why they go to other cities and tour homes. You know, that's why they take the tours and the guides tell them all about the history. 1846 brick right there. But one thing about the homes that they tour is a lot of times those are still in the period of the home. But what makes this one spectacular is that they've built it to cater to what everybody wants in a luxury home now. So it's kind of like a win-win. You know, you get the historical significance, you get all the stories, but you've got current day luxury. More small tile, look at that. Color is perfect. Kind of a blend of white, gray, a little bit of blue in there. Really soft blue vanity. Coordinates with that top. Mirror, and you got your sconces. Nice simple design on the tile arrangement. Have your sprayer, chrome hardware, and again that tile. So earlier I mentioned one of the secondary bedrooms was in the upper left corner of the home. But when you look at the home, there are several upper left corners. So I just wanted to clarify, this that we're standing in now, if you were standing out on the lawn looking at the front of the home, this is the first upper left corner. And this is part of the original build from 1846. And there is the log cabin from 1806. And a reminder, I am saying 18, not 19. We're talking about a 200-year story here. So when you're having events and you have people over, I guarantee there is not a shortage of what to talk about. Everybody will be asking about the home's history. So just as we had the front doors that were double doors, here we're on the second level, twin doors, beautiful hardware. So let's go take a look from the upper level. How's that view? Look at that. How's that for Greek Revival columns? Jeez, look at that view. Again, it's on about 5 acres. The home itself, over 11,000 square feet. Just over 2,000 square feet make up this front section that was original to the 1846 build, and the remainder of it is new luxury construction. Absolutely stunning. So we're on the upstairs landing. We're coming down the main staircase, going into the original foyer. We've come down to the main level where we started our tour inside. So again, we have one of the dining rooms right here. from 1846. Across the foyer, we have the second room from 1846. Unbelievable. So let's show you some of that outdoor living. That beautiful ceiling detail, really light color. That is beautiful. You immediately come out to an outdoor kitchen with all your necessities. Have your sink, your grill, your hood. Look at that. Fire pit, your pool, all your lanterns. And again, we talked inside with how functional the doors are, rather than all of them being just stationary glass. So can you imagine all of those opened up? Home is glowing. It's an October evening. Temperature is perfect. And the home is full of family and friends. Entertainment space is perfect. Imagine all that glass just glowing with the warm light. Have the fire pit going, the pool lights on. But not to dismiss the summertime. You also have the days where all the friends and family are out here splashing in the pool and it's just a crazy party. That's the great thing. It works for so many different occasions. Just visually, look at all the glass. That's just stunning. Tall ceiling, even in the covered porch. Love this Tennessee weather too. Look at that. You've got the white, you've got all that glass, the red roof, and look at it pop against that blue sky with white puffy clouds. That is just gorgeous. So during the indoor portion, on the one end of the home, we came and I pointed out the folding window above the bar area with the sink. Well, this is the exterior portion that matches with that. So you can fold back the window kind of in an accordion fashion, and it turns into a serving bar right here. So no matter what the occasion is, maybe you've got that October event going on with all the guests in the evening in the glowing glass, or maybe it is that summer day crazy party and everybody's splashing in the pool. They can just walk right up and be served refreshments right there without even having to go inside. They got great steps going down into the pool. Beautiful finish on this. Look at that. Inside we talk about how the tile coordinates with the vanity colors, and look at this. Even here, if you see how it coordinates with the decking, you have a little bit of contrast from cool to warm, but look at what a good selection that is. It kind of makes it pop, but at the same time it coordinates. Perfect, perfect selection. So we've just stepped outside of the front door, and this is kind of where it all started with the story. And if you recall, I mentioned that the story started back in 1806. So that's where I'm going to take you back. We're going to go out here and we're going to look at the original log cabin built on the property back in 1806. It has been fully restored. It in itself is just gorgeous sitting there. And it just lends itself to the entire story of this property. So let me just give you proximity. I'm just going to pan here and kind of show you where it is in proximity to the home. Look at that. Is that not stunning right there? That white house, red roof, blue sky, white puffy clouds. There's no doubt it's an iconic home here in Brentwood. That is spectacular. So let's check out the original log cabin. Okay, you ready to go back to 1806? This is amazing. It's one of those places that you just step inside and it just has a feeling of historical significance. Everything that must have occurred right here. The mere fact they built this. Got your fireplace, your mantle surround. Look at that brick. There's been some modern electrical added, so the building is more functional. But look at the beams. Look at the floors. And just think, 1806, and it's 2-level. That's amazing to me. So we talked about inside, about a home being iconic and there will be no shortage of stories. I guarantee that. 100%. I don't know how anybody could visit this property and not want to talk about the history of it. And as an owner of it, just think how much you'll be able to share with people. This is just amazing. Imagine being here and hearing horses pull up, going out to greet people. Of course, not being around in 1806, I'm not sure what it actually took to build something like this, but it sure is impressive. Just look at the texture on the stairs. I love it. So again, this is the original log cabin on the property, 1806, and that was before the main home, or the successive home, got started in about 1846. This is simply incredible. So that's the tour of the original log cabin. Now let's go check out the barn. Now the barn, I tell you, People in Brentwood have loved the barn for years. It's a signature, and it's as iconic as the home is. The red and white barn. But like I mentioned, time and gravity kind of took its toll on it. So it has been completely rebuilt. It's over 6,000 square feet. And it's got as many uses as your imagination has. Just to give you some reference on proximity to the home, and that is what over 6,000 square feet of modern barn looks like. It is incredible. And it is an icon. Everybody in Brentwood knows about the red and white barn. Well, you know about the barn door trend that was in homes. Well, these are literally sliding barn doors. No trend, it's reality. Is that not gorgeous right there? Look at all the space. Whether you're having events, you've got a car collection, or what have you, this space is simply incredible. 3 sets of barn doors on each side. You have an upper level as well. Look at that, nice soft light. Good breezeway through here. Nice lighting throughout. Okay, so what are you imagining doing in this space? I know everybody's got a different use for it. What's your use? While you're thinking about that, let's go check out the upper level. Just came up the stairs. Look at that door right there. It's kind of like where they would throw hay bales in. Have your lattice work, all for ventilation. And this is the upper level. So while you're imagining what you do on the lower level, just think of what you could do out here. This is incredible, and look how open it is. Another door on the far end. Open that for either ventilation or access. Same thing as the home. Although this has been rebuilt, can you imagine what was done on this same space in the original barn? Same footprint. You just try to imagine 1846. What took place right here? That's incredible. Beautiful, beautiful barn. Again, it's an icon for Brentwood. Everybody knows of the red and white barn. I think the barn in combination with the home is kind of what has kept the passion alive and wanted everybody to save the home and turn it into what it is today. The barn is just such an icon here. Beautiful, look at that, right against that skyline. Go back in the day and you could even imagine that upper level where the lattice work is. People pulling hay bales or throwing hay bales down. That is just incredible to think. Everything that happened on this property over 200 years. Coming off Moores Lane, the home also has a dedicated gated access point. You come into this small gravel driveway and see very, very typical for the period, and it just keeps everything feeling like it should. Sure, it would look good with some aggregate or concrete or stained concrete or something like that, but nothing gives it the feel like you're in the era like this type of gravel driveway. And it's compacted so it drives well. Again, you've got the original log home on the right. Home is sitting on 5 acres right here off Moores Lane. 8318 Moores Lane, Brentwood, Tennessee. It's right across from the Montclair community. Also across from the Boiling Springs schoolhouse. I believe Montclair and maybe the property that the schoolhouse is on, I believe was one time part of the farm, because it was such an extensive farm back in the day of Owen-Primm. That beautiful, beautiful landscape there. Original farmhouse or log cabin there. You just look at the exterior and there's no wonder why it's such an iconic home here in Brentwood. The presentation of it, the stories behind it, historical significance to the history of Brentwood itself. Everybody gets to enjoy this every day. And we ourselves, have driven by for years, and like I mentioned, they'd have events or family gatherings. You'd have white lights hanging out here in the yard, kind of nestled in the trees. It really looked like something straight out of a movie. And again, you walk in there, especially you walk in that front door. That front section, 1846, and you really can't imagine everything that took place right there. So it's fun, each time you walk through one of those rooms, you try to imagine, what all went on here? What happened on the front steps? Which guests showed up in, horse carriages and greeted everybody here on the farm? And it's things like that that makes properties, legendary and iconic. They just mean a lot to the area. And everybody in Brentwood's so thankful of everybody who was involved with saving this home. And not only saving it, but expanding it. I mean, it's more iconic now than ever. Over 11,000 square feet. Just over 2,000 original. The remaining is new construction. So somebody can have a home with this type of look, historical significance to the city, yet they are in current luxury living. That is the perfect recipe for sure. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one. It is an absolute thrill to talk about this property. And again, I know I keep talking about something that goes back to 1806, starting with a log cabin, and now presents with what is behind me. That's just an incredible story, and it is so important to Brentwood that this home was saved. I hope you enjoyed the tour. I hope you enjoyed all the details. It was a long tour, but when you enjoy a home as much as this one, there's so much to talk about and appreciate, the longevity of the home. So I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that. Again, my name is Sean Larson, real estate broker here in Middle Tennessee and the 38 Florida market. If I can answer anything real estate related, just reach out. I'll be happy to help out. Thanks so much and have a super day.